I was thinking this morning, just while making my coffee, we spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out the rules of the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And we generally respect them, right?
Yeah.
If I drop my favorite mug, gravity pulls it down. It
Yeah.
shatters.
Right.
I don't try to debate the floor. I don't, take a vote on whether gravity should apply to me today.
You don't negotiate with physics. If you touch a hot stove, well, thermodynamics says you're going to get burned. It's immediate, impartial feedback. You learn to live with it.
Exactly. We accept those boundaries. But today's deep dive is throwing this massive curveball at that whole idea.
It is.
The source material we are looking at argues that there are invisible laws. They're just as rigid, just as mathematically precise as gravity. But they govern the things we can't see.
Things like success, relationships, leadership, even spiritual growth.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating premise. The argument is essentially that if you try to build a life without understanding the physics of service, you're basically trying to defy gravity.
You might float for a second.
You might float for a second, but eventually the whole structure just collapses.
So we are going to test that theory today. We are unpacking a speech titled Universal Law and the Heart of Service, delivered by Reverend Myung back on March 13, 1983.
Right, at the Belvedere estate in New York.
Right.
And just to set the stage for you listening, this isn't a biography episode. We aren't doing a history lesson on the Unification Church or, some big theological debate.
No.
We are here to act as mechanics. We're popping the hood on a very specific, very complex philosophical worldview presented in this text.
Right. We're stripping it down to its engine.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see how this text redefines suffering, leadership, and love through the lens of what it calls universal law.
And it's a huge range.
Oh, it is. It moves from the subatomic level all the way up to the cosmic level. So buckle up.
It really does start at the subatomic level. I mean, the foundational concept here is something Moon calls dual essentialities.
Which, I have to be honest, sounds like something from a graduate physics textbook.
It does.
Dual essentialities. Let's unpack that first.
It sounds complex, but it's actually, quite grounding. Moon asserts that everything in the universe, and he lists the full hierarchy, minerals, plants, animals, humans, it all operates through a relationship.
Between a subject and an object.
Exactly, a subject and an object. You can think of it as plus and minus.
Okay, so like a battery or a magnet.
In a way, yes, but it's dynamic. The text emphasizes that these dualities aren't just sitting there, they are constantly interacting.
Okay.
In this worldview, nothing exists in isolation. A proton needs an electron. A stamen needs a pistil. The text argues that existence itself is defined by relationship.
Wow.
If you are alone, in the strictest sense of these laws, you don't really exist, you're just potential.
That's a heavy start. I relate, therefore I am.
Mm.
And this brings us to, well, it brings us to the concept of give and take.
Right.
Now, I want to pause here because usually when we hear give and take, or especially just giving, we think of subtraction.
Yeah.
If I have $10 and I give you $10, I have $0. It's a loss.
And that is exactly the mindset the text is fighting against. It creates a counterintuitive point here. Moon asks, do subject and object interact to lose themselves? He argues that if interaction resulted in loss, if the universe lost energy every time a relationship happened, the universe would eventually just, diminish and vanish.
It'd run out of gas.
Exactly, it would shrink to nothing. So true give and take, according to these laws, has to result in multiplication, not subtraction.
The analogy used in the text, and I love this because it's so biological, is breathing.
It's the perfect example. Think about it. When you exhale, technically you are losing air. You are emptying your lungs.
You're giving away your oxygen.
Right, but do you look at breathing out as a tragic loss of resources?
No, because if I don't exhale, I can't inhale. I'd pass out.
And that process maintains your life. It's a wave-like action, expanding and contracting. The text says, by the overall action of inhaling and exhaling, you gain the total benefit of maintaining your life. So in this worldview, service or giving isn't a depletion of resources. It's the metabolic process of growth.
So if you stop giving.
If you start giving, you aren't saving your energy. You're technically suffocating your spirit.
That is such a massive reframe. It moves altruism from something nice to do if you have time to something necessary for survival.
Exactly.
And that leads right into this wave theory of life. The text gets a little existential here and, frankly, a little dark before it gets bright.
It does. It maps this wave theory onto the human trajectory. The normal life path, according to the text, is a curve where you grow up, you hit your physical peak maybe in your 20s, and, well, gravity takes over.
My knees remind me of that every morning, the decline.
But here's the kicker. As your physical energy goes down, the text argues you need something else to go up to create balance.
Okay.
In a standard life, or what Moon calls the normal pattern, people focus on the physical when they are young. They use that energy for fun, for the self, for the now.
Because that's when you have the energy to party. You burn the candle.
Precisely. Then, when they get old and the physical is gone, they might turn to religion or the spiritual side. But the text argues, by then the capital is gone. The pluses and minuses just cancel each other out. You end up at zero.
Zero. The text is pretty brutal about this. It says there are many people who live and die and have a zero result at the end of their lives.
Yeah, and then it says after those people are gone for a while, nobody remembers.
Oof. It is the definition of a harsh truth. It implies you existed, you consumed, and you left no trace.
Exactly.
So what's the alternative? I mean, how do you avoid the zero result?
You build equity. The proposal here is to use your youthful physical energy when it's at its absolute peak and voluntarily subdue it to serve the spiritual self.
So you sacrifice the physical fun.
To build spiritual charge, yes.
The text compares this to electricity, right?
It does. Like building a charge in a battery. If you do this, if you use your physical prime to serve others, you aren't canceling out your life. You are storing up what the text calls a shining store of equity that remains even after the physical body declines.
You're converting temporary physical energy into permanent spiritual capital.
That's it. You're essentially creating a permanent asset.
So it's an investment strategy, basically.
Yeah.
But instead of stocks, you're investing sweat equity into the universe.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads to the next logical question. If you want to build this massive wave of equity, where do you start?
Do you start by being the boss?
No.
The text is very specific about this. You don't start at the top. You start at the bottom, the absolute bottom.
This is the physics of the bottom. The text argues that you can only rise as high as the depth from which you started. It's all about momentum.
Right.
If you want to create a gigantic wave, you have to hit the lowest point first.
This part really struck me because it reframes the whole idea of struggle. I think most of us, when we're in a bad spot, broke, lonely, misunderstood, we think something has gone wrong.
I made a mistake.
I made a mistake. Exactly. We view it as failure. But Moon describes it as necessary mechanics.
Right. He uses the analogy of pressure systems in weather. High pressure pushes low pressure down. But once air is pushed to the very bottom, where can it go?
It has to rise. It has nowhere else to go.
Exactly. Moon describes persecution and suffering not as setbacks, but as fuel. He literally says, I have used that persecution as the extra energy to kick myself up higher and higher.
A cosmic slingshot.
It is. It's a cosmic slingshot.
That image of the slingshot is so powerful. The further you are pulled back, the more difficult your circumstances, the more people criticize you, the more potential energy you are accumulating.
But the text suggests that utilizing this energy requires absolute focus. You can't just be at the bottom and complain. You have to be aimed.
Yes.
There's this vivid analogy of the Indianapolis 500.
Oh, yeah, the race car driver.
Yeah. Right. If you are driving a race car at hundreds of miles an hour toward a goal, do you have time to look around at the audience?
No.
Do you have time to see what other people are doing or if they are cheering for you?
No way. You blink, you crash.
The text argues that when you are moving at lightning speed toward a spiritual goal, starting from the bottom and shooting for the top, you cannot be distracted by what the world thinks of you.
You have to pierce the goal like a spear.
Exactly.
This intensity really bleeds into the leadership style described in the text. And I have to say, this segment on leadership was unexpected.
It's very counterintuitive.
We usually think of a leader as someone who lifts people up, praises them, makes them feel good.
This is the leadership paradox.
Yeah.
It is controversial, and the logic here is fascinating. Moon describes a leadership style where when a member succeeds or gains fame, the leader intentionally pushes them down.
Or criticizes them. Yeah, he mentions Mr. Yu, who was the church president at the time.
Right.
Apparently he was the #1 disciple. But Moon says, I still criticized him all the time in public.
And he mentions PhD candidates being sent to do menial work, digging ditches, physical labor.
To the modern ear, that sounds terrible. Why would you treat your top performers like that?
Well, the text explicitly states the reason is to prevent arrogance. But look at the physics we just discussed. If a leader stays at the top and just receives praise, the universe will reject them.
They become a tyrant.
They become a tyrant.
Yeah.
So to rise higher, they must be pushed down to create more maneuvering space for the ascent.
So by pushing them down, he's actually helping them.
In this worldview, yes, he says, by pushing Mr. Yu down so far, I was creating for him a great area in which he could rise upward.
Right.
If you are already at the ceiling, you can't jump. If you are pushed to the floor, you have the whole room to leap into.
He uses a pretty visceral image for this, the sledgehammer and the nail.
Yeah. The best nails just take the blow and penetrate the wood without hesitation. It's a demand for absolute resilience. And the idea is that the leader, too, must go down. Moon says if he stays up while pushing others down, the universe will kick him out. He has to follow the same law.
So everyone is in this cycle of going to the bottom to rise to the top. But rising to what? What's the structure here? Because it's not just do good things.
No, it's very structured. This brings us to the expanding hierarchy of service. The text outlines a formula that is pivotal to this theology. It's a stepped progression.
It starts with the individual living for the family.
Then the family lives for the society or nation.
The nation lives for the world.
And the world lives for the cosmos, or God.
It's like Russian nesting dolls of service.
Exactly. And the text introduces the concept of indirect dominion. It argues that humans are currently in a state where we have to grow by uniting with larger and larger subjects or causes.
You can't just skip a step.
You can't just skip to the end. You have to master the smaller circles to expand into the larger ones.
There was a musical analogy here that I thought was really helpful. The violin.
Yes. The 5 lines of the musical staff. Moon argues that you cannot play music on just 2 lines. You have to follow the laws of harmony, which require the full staff. In the same way, you can't build a spiritual life just on the individual level. You need the full 5 lines. Individual, family, nation, world, God.
If you try to play on just 2 lines, it's just noise.
Or at least it's not a symphony. And this hierarchy isn't just abstract theory. The text applies it directly to the most personal relationship of all.
Marriage.
Marriage.
This is where we get into the cosmic connection of marriage. And again, the stakes are raised. In this text, a spouse isn't just a partner or a roommate you share bills with.
No, not at all. The text argues that your spouse represents the entire universe. One partner represents the plus realm, the other represents the minus realm.
And when they come together.
It's not just 2 people hugging, it's the collision of cosmic forces.
This explains the rationale behind the mass weddings and the intercultural marriages mentioned in the source. You know, looking from the outside, people often wonder why someone would marry a person from a completely different culture, or even an enemy nation.
Right. It's not just for show. The goal, according to the text, is to digest the things the world hates division. By marrying across enemy lines, east and west, black and white, you are melting those extremes into unity.
He uses the analogy of melting gold.
Yes. To get pure gold, you have to melt away the impurities with high heat. The text suggests that these difficult international marriages are that heat.
They burn away the cultural prejudices.
To leave behind the pure gold of universal love.
And speaking of heat, there is a very strong critique of Western dating in here. And it comes back to that electricity metaphor we talked about earlier.
It does. The text argues that casual dating desiccates the energy of love. Moon compares it to a battery or a charge. If you are constantly touching, dating, breaking up, having fling,
You're leaking energy.
you're leaking energy. You're at maybe 30% intensity.
And the goal is 100%.
The ideal presented is preserving that love until it is fully mature.
Right.
100% intensity. So that when opposites finally do unite, it creates a massive spark.
Or lightning.
More lightning. Exactly.
Lightning. That's a powerful image. It's not a flicker. It's a bolt of energy that connects heaven and earth.
And he says that this spark is what electrifies God. It's a very dynamic view of the deity, that God is waiting for that human spark to feel joy.
So we've covered gravity-like laws, wave theories, sledgehammers, lightning bolts.
Yeah,
This is a lot to take in.
it is.
But if we zoom out, what does this all mean for the listener?
I think the central thesis here is that living for the sake of others is being presented not as a moral nice to have. It's not just be nice. It is presented as a law of physics required for survival.
Like if you don't do it, you wither away. You hit that 0 result.
Yeah, exactly. The text implies that selfishness is literally self-destruction because it violates the law of give and take. You stop breathing, essentially.
There's a distinction made near the end of the text that I think sums up the aspiration of this whole worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Moon distinguishes between being Reverend Moon's Moonies and God's Moonies.
That's a crucial distinction. He's saying that allegiance to a human leader isn't the end point. The goal is for the individual to become a temple of God in their own right.
A place where God can feel total freedom to dwell.
That's the poetic phrase he uses, yes.
God's Moonies. It's about owning that identity yourself, not just following order.
Without internalization, becoming the thing you are studying.
So here's the provocative thought I want to leave you with today. We talk about the physics of the bottom. The idea that you can only rise as high as you are willing to go deep.
The slingshot effect.
Right. So for everyone listening, if you are going through something right now that feels like you're at the bottom, maybe you're overworked, underappreciated, or facing some kind of failure, what if you flip the script?
Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, how much potential energy am I building right now?
Exactly. If you viewed your current lowest point, not as a failure, but as the necessary tension for a slingshot trajectory upward, how would you act differently today? Would you complain or would you start aiming?
That's the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.